On today's episode of the 1% Podcast, we are joined by Mayor Eric Phillips, the newly elected mayor of the city of Caldwell. We're going to be talking to Mayor Phillips today about all things Caldwell, the challenges that he sees facing the community, the opportunities. Caldwell's a unique community here in the Treasure Valley that hosts the College of Idaho, as well as a number of different community events like the Caldwell Night Rodeo, and has a unique piece of the Treasure Valley with Caldwell. And so we're excited to have him on the podcast today. We're going to talk about development and the challenges that are facing Caldwell and his new regime as the newly elected mayor.
People expect to be at the level their parents are as soon as they go out the gate.
Yeah.
And they fail to use their youth to work hard, to be able to later in life play hard. I think that's what's lost on a lot. They have this expectation. Caldwell, after serving 15 and a half years in the police department, I worked 2 years as a director of safety for Caldwell School District. And then my contract was up in June, and I declared in January for mayor. And I went through the Thunderdome during the campaign, right? That's quite an interesting adventure if you ever choose to do that and you ever want some advice. I got a lot of advice for folks. I don't know everything, but I sure did learn a lot. And that was my second run. Watching our president, sure, I don't agree with some of the things he says sometimes, but he's getting things done. And I think that's important to look at folks like that. And you take all of those elements, that are your fundamentals, and decide that you're here to get things done, to carry out the people's work.
Today we're joined by Mayor Eric Phillips of Caldwell, the newly elected mayor. Mayor, thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it. I love folks like yourself that reach out to our community and bring people in and have conversations.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you and excited about a lot of the new wave of leadership that we've seen come in through this last election cycle. We've had Mayor Hogaboam on already and intend to have him again, and excited to have you on here and allow people to get to know you a little bit and ask kind of some questions about the platform that you ran on, who you are as a person, the challenges that you see facing Caldwell and Canyon County and the Treasure Valley specifically. But I always like to jump in and get to know the person we're interviewing a little bit and allow you to kind of talk about what your life was like growing up. So if you don't mind, share with us where you grew up at, how you grew up, what your family situation was kind of like growing up, and give our listeners a little bit of a background on yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I know we really talked before we went live, but I'm born and raised in Idaho, right? I was born in the Treasure Valley, more specifically. Just to clarify, I was born in Nampa, but grew up in Caldwell. And I've been here ever since, minus military service. But growing up, this Treasure Valley was a lot smaller. My family's been here since the early 1900s, part of my family, and then other elements of that moved in over time to get me here today. That being said, I went to Caldwell School District K through 4th. And then when Central Canyon opened up, when that was a big thing, when Valley View got its third elementary, I lived in Valley View at the time, but I got babysat in Caldwell. That's why I went to the other school district. And then I went to 5th and 6th grade, Central Canyon, went to Valley View Junior High. Valley View High opened up, did 4 years there, and graduated and went into the Navy shortly thereafter. And back in that time frame, it was a very rural agricultural area on the outskirts of the city, so I could actually ride my bike to school back when I was in elementary. And in this day and age, that's quite a different. It's almost a death wish. But that being said, I born and raised here, went in the Navy 4 years, active duty, was stationed in California, Washington State, got out, started working, went to college at Boise State at the time. I stayed in the military, so I did the reserves out of Gowan Field here in Boise, and 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. But the war in Iraq and Afghanistan were pretty hot at the time, so there was a lot of deployments going on, and they were really relying heavily on reserve. So I deployed 3 more times out of here, besides the deployments I did on active duty. Went overseas after training here in the States, and when I had first gotten back to Idaho, my original active duty, I lived briefly in Nampa, kind of off 12th Avenue, then moved to Meridian. I was doing construction, stocking shelves at Winco, worked at Micron briefly, all trying to make ends meet as I went to school. And then, of course, I would deploy in between. And then I decided kind of around the 2009 timeframe after um, I had went through a divorce with my ex-wife, and I decided to buy a house in Caldwell because we'd already been living in an apartment, and that was my first adventure of going through the home buying process, new builds and things like that. And I've just been in Caldwell ever since. Now I have, I'm remarried, I have a son. I'm the mayor of Caldwell after serving 15 and a half years in the police department. I worked 2 years as a director of safety for Caldwell School District. And then my contract was up in June, and I declared in January for mayor. And I went through the Thunderdome during the campaign, right? That's quite an interesting adventure if you ever choose to do that and you ever want some advice. I got a lot of advice for folks. I don't know everything, but I sure did learn a lot. And that was my second run election. I ran for city council, but when I did back then, it was a very, new thing, right? There's a little bit more information out there on that you can kind of look up, but for our city, there's just not a lot. And I learned a lot of things during my initial run, but when I decided to run for mayor, and we can get into that, I'm sure you have additional questions, but, I just decided I wanted to see a different direction in the city, and having been born and raised there and grew up, I want to make sure we had a healthy balance as we move forward as a city between our past, present, and the future. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's a lot of stories in between, but my family lives throughout the Treasure Valley. We love this place. We love Idaho. We're all over here and really the western United States, some down south, but this is where I call home and my family calls home. So I love it here.
No, love it. Thank you for sharing that. What was it? Were there any events specifically or something that compelled you to want to run? It sounds like one point city council and eventually for mayor. Was there something that kind of pushed you and made you feel like, I need to get involved?
So growing up, so I have family that have, farms and horses and cows and such. I grew up in a very conservative, agricultural focused, kind of family background. Of course, I did have a city folk family, but back then it was much more rural. So that's kind of where my identity for politics was grounded in. And then, because I grew up showing horses and in the ag world, I had a lot of, instead of being around kids all the time, I was around a lot of adults.
Yeah.
I had a lot of adult conversations. Of course, adults' conversations can influence you.
Yeah.
But over time, as I learned about the world and saw the world and traveled the country, I really realized what a gem we have here in the Treasure Valley. There's a lot of chaos going on. Other states, especially back then, as I was in my 20s, right, 30s.
Yeah.
So from a basis of wanting to protect our community, right, overall, the Treasure Valley, even my city, years ago when we were coming out of COVID, right, COVID I was not a fan of from all the complexities that happened and just some of the, I felt, totalitarian dictator style rules and processes and things that were done across America.
Really mandates that had never previously been had, right?
People started deciding there was classes of people, right? Like the vaccinated versus unvaccinated, those who wouldn't wear masks or not, people getting fired,
what businesses are essential, what are not.
Who are we to decide that? So, over time, between how I grew up, things I've seen in other places of the world, history, right? So through education, learning about history is very important because we don't necessarily want to repeat the mistakes of the past, and we also want to repeat things that went well. Coming out of COVID, I saw a lot of businesses that had suffered or collapsed in the Caldwell or the Canyon County area, and they were just struggling. So I started a community page. Didn't know it was ever going to go anywhere.
On Facebook.
Right? Caldwell, Idaho Community in Crime. There was a Treasure Valley Community in Crime, and which was a great page, but the valley was much smaller when it first started. And I felt like, although they had an important thing going on, not that I wish harm upon anyone in the Treasure Valley, but like if there's a car wreck in Eagle, and I'm from Caldwell, it's not applicable.
Yeah.
I hope that, the best for them. So I decided to bring a Caldwell focused aspect. And really it started, a place I was eating a lot at the time, was Chop Shop in Indian Creek. They were one of the only people down there that were just struggling to survive. And I thought, there's no real page to advertise them. And I created it. I sent it to a bunch of my friends. Took me like 6 months to get 100 people, another 5 months to get to 200. I started researching and adding more businesses as people were coming back online, and I was just sharing that. But, until you really get up to like the 500, the 1,000 mark, that's when things kind of start to take off a little bit, a little
Yeah.
more activity. Well, with the basis of trying to help people, right? That then turned into advocacy, right? So when you start watching government, I think that's what's important. We all focus about everything in DC or the world, things that we, right, will have no effect on. We could write our Congress or president, whoever, hoping they listen to us. But at the end of the day, the politics that affect you the most
Are the ones your own city,
your county,
school district,
state, school district, mosquito abatement district. I mean, there's all sorts of random districts. There's libraries,
irrigation districts,
and people just never pay attention. They don't see where that money's going, what processes are in place, who's on there. Sometimes you see throughout the nation embezzlement things that break out. So from a holistic point of view, I just started to focus more on what was going on. And once you peer into that world, you can't unsee things that you see. That doesn't mean there was like all this nefarious, evil stuff, kind of like we're seeing with Epstein files coming out, which, man, what a world on that.
Mind-blowing.
But just concerns, right? A lot of concerns. A lot of people felt there was just, as they stated, rubber stamping, things going in.
Yeah.
People weren't being listened to, but you also have to pay attention to what's going on. You see the things going on, but if you're not paying attention to the process, systems, processes that are in place that get you to that, right? So what are your ordinances? What are your state laws? Who's coming in? Who's running the show? Who's on your council? If you aren't paying attention to those things, that's how we get the result of what we see today, which, I feel there's a lot of pain points in our and other cities across the Treasure Valley because we approve such an explosive rate. We didn't allow the infrastructure. That's one thing that I've harped on, and people that have I've spoken with harped on, is that they're at wit's end with all of it. So,
and I've been beating that drum, same thing, right? So, if you could, like, maybe share some specifics of things that that you saw and that you're,
So when you get into, as my group grew, right, we started sharing city council meetings, and there was at one point a person had, I can't remember if we were like 6,000 people. And I was just sharing the meetings and stuff, and more viewers were starting to watch, and I was sharing some information. And
so you're live streaming the meetings.
I would share the live stream,
Okay,
right? Because there's a YouTube.
Yeah.
And then there was a point where I started actually, because it's 1 hour, 4 hours, right? So people get lost. I started sharing agendas, the actual agenda. But when I started segmenting it, that's when people really took notice, because then they could focus in on whatever the topic was instead of
short format stuff.
So I got asked, like, are you trying to get us fired, right? And I thought that to be strange, right? What's wrong with sharing what's publicly available? And, I guess technically it did end up happening over time, right? Some politicians are out of work from the political realm right now, but that, happened over time. But the more I watched, the more I saw, the more you got to watch planning and zoning, urban renewal, design review, hearing commissioner. When I don't have a room with a bunch of pins and cords going all over the place like you see in some of those action movies, but in my mind, I felt like that became a thing where I started seeing all the different influence, the players over time,
who was getting appointed by who, and what, and where they had been previous.
It just, as a citizen that thinks taxpayer dollars are sacred, right? That started to bother me. Obviously, I wouldn't have a home, right, if someone hadn't built it. Like, that's not lost on me, that construction and things are important, but it's a balance, especially where we have a strong ag community in our area, right? I think infill is important versus just as fast as you can get out there.
We're going to approve everything, right? If you send in an application, we're approving it, right? Like,
so as I saw all those things take place over time, and not just Caldwell, but our neighboring cities. Right.
Nampa, Star, Middleton,
Middleton,
Star, Eagle, Boise, Eagle.
So they approved all these developments, and this, the main roads, the infrastructure and stuff are suffering, the schools. So I just got to a point where I said, I can't live with this anymore. And, I had my initial run for council, which that was kind of a last minute, if you're ever going to run for office, start way ahead of time. I'm talking at least a year out, if not 2, even 3, depending on the office. You got to start watching things, researching things, set up, a website, what's your platform, all of it. But um, after the first, when I lost, I was going to run for council again, but then a continuance of decisions and statements that were made. The parking meters, the Dirt Lot Hotel were approving things without making them have their own huge apartment complexes. There's one called the Tillian downtown. A lot of great people that live there. They have the Griddle now under there and some other restaurants. It's wonderful. But, my big hang up is they had them build it without enough parking. You look, I'm not trying to be like Boise, but you look at Boise. Wow. They know how to do parking garages, right? They have great structures. It's not clogging up the roads. Everyone has a place to park underneath. And I even feel that parking is a quality of life thing. I'm not saying it's necessarily a human right, but it's definitely a quality of life.
It puts a tax on the time of the other people that are in the area, right?
Yeah, if you get a place and you can't park anywhere, and once again, it takes time to find a parking spot, and you're just stressed out. So it does tax people, and all of that, right? To say that I decided enough was enough, and I decided to enter the Thunderdome. So yeah, that's kind of the main reason why. I just got tired of what I was seeing and decided that enough was enough. We weren't being heard, and I decided to enter the gauntlet and throw down.
So talk specifically kind of through that process. What were some of the challenges and hurdles that you had to overcome through that process? What part of your message did you feel like really connected with the voters and the citizens and the platform that you stood on to get elected?
So I think what all government officials, right? Because we've seen over history that, people do it for the right reasons, people do it for the wrong reasons. You have to first search your soul and decide, why are you doing it? It's up to each individual. What is your motivations? What are the problems you're facing? What's the level of office? What's your goals? And you have to do a deep search in your soul. Are you ready for this? Because especially like where I'm elected mayor of Caldwell, I'm on deployment for 4 years. I mean, I come from the military world, and I use that terminology, but it's a 24/7, 7-day a week. Like, I am the mayor. I am Caldwell, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like the Superman thing.
Yeah.
So you have to be all in on doing it. And if you're not going to be all in, and if it's just a check in the box, maybe you shouldn't run, right? Because the people depend on you. No matter the size of the city, if you got 10 people, 10,000, 100,000, you should be all in, fully committed, and be prepared. And that's where, when I talk about starting the 1, 2, or 3 years out, this is where the difficulties come in. There's no, the only requirements are be a citizen of Caldwell, be there for 30 or more days, U.S. citizen, and your voting address must be the same as your residential, right? That's why you have to live in Caldwell. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no education requirement. There's nothing that says you have to do a bunch of research. But if you're going to take a position, even city council, you should do some sort of research, look at your commissions and boards, and really watch that process. The process is what got me to run, right? What I was seeing. But you have to you have to PhD that stuff as much as you can. At least master's degree, right? Which I am finishing right now through Arizona State. But you have to really know who's who, what's what, watch the process, the system over time, things that you're comfortable with, things that you're uncomfortable, and just go all in. And it sucks, there's not just I wish it was on a thumb drive and I could just plug it in, which for those that are listening, I'm not into merging technology with humans. It's just a figurative sense. But you got to take a deep dive and have that passion and preparation. Money, right, is a struggle, right? Is anyone going to donate to your campaign?
Yeah.
What's your platform? What's your message? Even just your sign itself. When you're looking at a sign on a screen, you get excited because all the things that you want to have all the things that you feel strongly about on there. But what you have to think of is in terms of less is more. So when you're driving, people are driving past, you have a split second of their time to catch their attention. So if you have all your bullet points, which thankfully my wife is in public relations, so what I thought was a good idea, she thought, all good points, but that's probably not going to work because it's just going to be too small. And signs aren't cheap. So if you're going to buy, it's good to buy in bulk. You don't buy the wrong thing and then turn around and lose an election. I mean, and that is the risk too. No matter how good of a message, how motivated and passionate you are, and you can still come in dead last. So
What did you feel like specifically about your message connected with the voters?
really, I had the opportunity to take the message to the people, right? Instead of just sending them mailers, I harped on our infrastructure. I harped on the decision-making process, that we need better leadership, that we need more of a servant minded leadership, to take the time to listen to the people, to hear the people, to actually understand where they're coming from. And
Which is huge, right? Like
yeah,
that's
what it
huge
like
for any leader.
some people, in different jurisdictions have meetings where they'll bring a bunch of people in. I sweated it out on driveways. I froze it out on driveways. I mean, it was a year, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to start at least a year out. And I declared in January. So as soon as I started meeting with people, it's cold as heck. And the gas, the time, losing time with your family,
Yeah.
that's a challenge. All the while I was working in the first half of it. I was running an HOA, which I'm not a fan of HOAs, but you got to get people in there that have the right mind instead of letting it be chaos.
Yeah.
And trying to raise my son, and that's all a balancing act. So once again, if you're going to do it, you got to be all in. And I was up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning talking to people on the phone, emails, messages, and just really going back and forth. Because I think sometimes when people run, they elevate themselves above everyone else, right? Whether it be in their own mind or people elevate them, and that gets in their head, right?
Yeah.
You got to stay grounded. You got to stay humbled, and really lock in tune with the people, so you understand why, if they moved here, why you don't want to be like where they come from. Know where you came from as a city, where you're at, and where you're going is very important. So it was just a constant conversation about not being heard, rushing, everyone was rushing everything. It just felt like it was being forced through no matter what anyone wanted. And I do understand in governance, sometimes you have to make tough decisions, but the people are your boss.
Yeah.
Right? The people are my boss.
Well, and I think that's such an important point, right? I counsel people on this all the time, whether they're in city councils, mayors, county commissioners, whatever elected position they may be in. It becomes really easy for people in political office to lose sight of the belief that I represent the people who elected me, right? I think that very easily people can shift to the mindset of they elected me to make the decisions that I think are best. So they're putting their trust in me. Therefore, whatever decision I make is the right one for my constituents, rather than the view of I was elected by my constituents based on what they knew about me at the time.
Yes.
The decisions that I make must represent the will of the people and what their will is regarding this particular subject, right? And I think those are two very different states of mind, and they often get confused, particularly in elected officials.
Well, and you do learn sometimes what you can and can't do, right? I mean, that's just to be transparent on that. But at the same time, you should never lose sight of your fundamentals, right? Never lose sight of why you decided to run, who helped get you there. I still, after I put my boy to bed, I mean, I'm trying to get better about, I'm not perfect yet. So sorry, wife, who's Angie, by the way. When I get home, right, maybe I shouldn't be on the phone. I need to lock in and spend time with my son. But as soon as he goes to bed, I'm back on the email. I'm back on the phone, Facebook, going through, responding to comments. I've seen people get elected and disconnect, right? Because you get a new circle of people. Your community partners, you're going to dinners and all these things. But I just gave one, I think it was last night, another community update. I'm trying to do like a weekly, or, even if it's every other week, an update to the people. So know what's going on and just talk openly with them. I'm a human being, no matter how high in office you ever get. We all breathe air. We all bleed, right? We go to the bathroom. We have an expiration on our life. Someday we're no longer going to be here. So I think if you stay grounded, right, and realize that we are still equals. Yeah, there's bad people out there that I don't consider myself morally and decision-making process equal to, but outside of that, we're all the same. We're just trying to survive life, and the irony is none of us are going to survive it. So we're in it together, and, if you've been elevated to a leadership position, do it and do it well, right? Do it with passion, compassion, have empathy. There's people suffering out there. We have people that can't get to work because they don't have a vehicle. Maybe they have a record, right, from their past. They can't get a job and they're going to the food banks. We have families that can't afford to put sheets on their kids' bed, right? You have kids that come to school tired just coming from the school system because, maybe their window got broke out at some point in time. And I've seen this, right? Where at night when they're just trying to sleep, they have plastic stapled to their window and it's
Rattling.
shaking and they can't sleep. And then, you got teachers that are pissed at them when they come to school because they're falling asleep. Well, that's where you take that dive into the why, right?
Yeah.
So going back to governance, people are upset. Well, why? If you don't listen to them, you don't hear them, and you elevate yourself above them to a level that kind of goes into that elitist mentality,
Yeah.
you're going to have problems, right? And you're going to have strife and you're going to have warfare in your city. And that's what I kind of felt like back then. Politically, there was a war declared, lines were drawn, and people chose not to humble themselves. I'm so happy that I'm mayor, but I wish the city had never been in a position where I needed to come.
Yeah, where you felt like you had to,
right?
Yeah.
But I had to, like, it was not optional. I just wanted to spend time with my son, finish my degree, maybe put in for a police chief someday, or, a high ranking position, finishing my math. That's why I was trying to get my master's, was to move up in the police or school safety world, right? I really took a liking to school safety, but, I just decided that I have to, it's like almost, we decided to fight World War II and World War One because there was a lot of problems in the world, Now that's the macro
Yeah,
level,
you feel
right?
compelled to do it.
Far, but you feel compelled to bring change, right?
Yeah.
And to save whatever you're representing. So
What do you feel like from your background, specifically in the military and in public safety, has helped prepare you for your current role as mayor?
one, it's good to work in large organizations, right? Not that people who've only been in small organizations can't run for office and do well, but when you look at the system, the
You feel like
leadership
this helped
training,
you, yeah.
yeah, you know, constantly having huge responsibilities, especially as you move up in rank, or just responsibilities in general, things you deal with, an expectation to do things correct, do things right, be just, stay out of trouble, and also to be able to go through hell and back, right? Is in the military and policing, you got long deployments. There's things you see you can't unsee. So it becomes a real driver to protect, I mean, that's, I think, why people get into
Yeah.
military and policing, I would hope, and other first responder jobs is, they want to help people, they want to protect. So having those fundamentals, right, I think are very, very helpful. And I had worked for the city of Caldwell, so I had, 15 and a half years. So I understood most of how it ran. I've learned a lot since then too, just
Sure.
entering office.
Yeah. You had different perspectives based on your
Yeah, different
roles.
perspective, but I understood it. I'd seen issues myself. I want to advocate for the employees, not just the citizens, but the employees themselves. Yes, I'm the CEO of Caldwell, I'm the mayor, but I also work for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what can I do? I think retention is big, right? Because when we train people, spend all that taxpayer dollars to get them where they're at, if we lose them, now we have to start over. So we
Yeah.
lose the experience, and then we have to spend money to get them back up, to a position to where they're hopefully equal to whatever left. So one of my
You want to attract high quality people to want to be in the city, to live there, to serve there, to work there.
people with good personalities, people that are excited to be there, people that want to make a difference, my biggest push is to represent the people. We serve the people, no matter what your job is.
Yeah.
Sure, some people are challenging sometimes and complain a lot, but that's their right.
Yeah.
Right? They're residents. They have a level of expectation, and we want to provide the best services we can because our job is to provide the basic level of services. So, I strive to make sure I try and create a good work environment, right, for them to be in. I've told my executive team, as we talk about retention, every little win counts, right? So there was an example. The old mayor wouldn't allow a vending machine at City Hall, right? So people, if they want to go get, sure, they could bring something. Sometimes you forget, or maybe you just get a sudden urge. They have to go down to the gas station, right? So they have to take time on their break to go down and get something that's probably expensive. Try and use the bathroom. Maybe they don't get a chance because they don't want to be late for work. So now I just asked them, like, do you guys want this? And they're, yeah. So, all right, go forth and do it as long as it's not violating law, and everything we do is legally, ethically, and morally correct. So something that can get me a fraction of a win in employee happiness, at least in City Hall, adds up. Will I ever be able to get to 100%? I don't know, right? Only time will tell. How close to 100% can I get? And that's on everything, right? You always should be striving to get closer and closer to 100%.
And I think that's a great mark of leadership in general, is just to have the perspective that you were there to serve the people
Yes.
that you work with, right? And great leaders, Leaders Eat Last. I'm big, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Extreme Ownership was a book that made a big impact on me. But the idea that leaders are there to serve,
Yes.
and that you take credit for nothing and responsibility for everything. And I think those are all things that go a long ways in gaining loyalty from the people that you work with, to having a servant leader mentality where people feel that, hey, this person's here for the right reasons. They're serving and helping everyone around them. And that creates a culture in organizations that you could not get otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Every organization takes on the personality of its leader. And so if you want to have a dynamic, great organization, you have to have great people, and great people don't work with low quality leaders.
Oh yeah, 100%. And, coming from, backgrounds, right? I'm not going to name names, but there's times I've seen leaders, right? They'll let people drown, right? Sure, sometimes you do have to make a tough decision and remove someone, right? But at the same time, you should take the ability to coach them up, right? I mean, of course, documentation, if it's a constant issue, eventually you have to make the hard decision. But
Generally speaking, it's better to coach and elevate people than it is to constantly replace them.
Yeah, if they make a really bad mistake, you may have to, elevate a voice, depending on the severity. But really, you can take the opportunity, and we've already done that. We sat down with some folks and just had conversations. I want them to be here, right?
Yeah.
I want them to say, I want them to be successful, but I need them to also rise to the occasion. So, when I give time for these conversations to be had, it's an olive branch, right? To make sure, because when you do transfer administrations, there's the old way of doing things, and then there's the new way. So we have to figure that out. And I think as a leader, if you understand that, unless there's just really bad stuff going on that you got to bring that hammer down and fix right then and there, take the opportunity to help the people transition.
Yeah.
Because if your predecessor didn't, or was doing things that probably weren't a good idea or the best ethical, legal, and moral correct thing to do, help transition those people. I remember coming up through the ranks in the military, I saw people just treat people atrocious, right? I had phenomenal leaders, right, that would guide and then empower people to be the best person they can be at their job, right? Because we're all, we've got to our point, however we got there. And, you got to give people the chance to be successful. It's not just about my success, it's about their success. The more successful all of us are, our goal is to make Caldwell successful. So if we're not successful, and I'm not helping them be successful, then, we're just going to be back in the same boat. So leaders should always coach people up, empower your people, and motivate them. And be okay to step back, right? I have a young son, right? As he learns to ride a bike and do other things, there's times I have to step back and, let him. People will make mistakes.
Yep.
They trip. You help them get back up, and
great safe parameters for him to do that, right? He's going to fall down in the driveway,
Yeah.
not in the middle of the street, right? Just helping people set up and be able to learn and to have a certain level of autonomy that's healthy based on their skills and experience. And then as that grows, be able to offer more. I'm going to talk about for a minute, Caldwell's a unique community, right? Like Caldwell is the county seat of Canyon County. Had struggled for a number of years with crime and other things like that we talked at length about this with Sheriff Donahue and a lot of the efforts that have been made there. And Caldwell has transformed as a community. The whole downtown area, Indian Creek Plaza, the businesses that have come in there, all of the growth that has come to Caldwell. The College of Idaho is a great institution with great programs and other things that's attracted a lot of high quality people. I think that as more people are coming to the area, they're seeing it's beautiful. There's farm ground. You have views of the Owyhees. There's a lot of great things to love about it.
Yeah.
What are things that make Caldwell unique to you and that make you love it and a proud citizen of living there?
I appreciate that. We are, I feel we're a gem, right? We're a gem in the Treasure Valley. We have a lot of great things. We are the Western Front, right? We're kind of like that last
Yeah.
bastion of farmland, city, combination, and we do have gorgeous views of the Owyhees. Not far to drive to see the Snake River, wine country. We have Indian Creek. There's a lot of great things. We have the rodeo. When you talk about the election, right, and just that Thunderdome, I say that we have a rowdy section of the rodeo for a reason,
Yeah.
right? Because we got folks that are passionate. They love their city, they love their county, their state, their country. They love their families, and they love their way of life. So,
And it does not get any more American than the Caldwell Night Rodeo.
yes, oh yes, yeah, and we have tickets, by the way. This year we purchased them for those people out there that are wondering. But yeah, I love the rodeo. I've had the chance to work it, be there, but it's all those unique things that make us who we are, including our train horns, which is a topic of conversation right now. But yeah, we just got a lot of good things going on. And going back, I talked about the new page. This would take me even years before that. I remember, so where Indian Creek's at, it used to be King's. It's I believe it was 2 stories.
Yeah.
And I remember going there as a child.
So do I.
Toys, all sorts of things. There was Pennywise around the corner.
Yep.
So those are gone, right? But look what we put in place, especially in the Indian Creek area. I remember when King's was closed and condemned, and it was like the big "what do we do?" And I'm pretty sure I was fairly new at the police department back then, if I remember correctly. There's a lot of things that have happened since then, so I have to scratch the brain here and there. But I remember it was like, what do we do? And even go back even further, when the car wash fell through on 10th Avenue, I remember in high school washing my car there. Back when they opened that up and made the water wheel and such, we thought that was the coolest thing on the planet. Like, people were coming from the Treasure Valley to see that, right? And that was a fraction of what we now have. Amongst a lot of visionaries, right? First and foremost, Mayor Nancolis was the heavyweight mayor of Caldwell.
Yeah.
So, once he got on board with Indian Creek and everything, that thing just took off. But there was a lot of work that went in the planning behind, and it was a decision on what to do with those places, because they had to open up the car wash. Eventually, they tore down King's, and just that piece by piece process. But I remember when they kind of the whole pathway got connected from 5th Avenue to 10th.
Yep.
And they rerouted Indian Creek. It felt like a heart had finally, been in downtown Caldwell, because it was dead.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there wasn't a lot going on.
No.
Not a lot of movement or foot traffic. There was always a heart to Caldwell, all the people, but the downtown finally had that heartbeat, and it was pumping blood, which I, called the people that would come down there. I would see 1A plates, Owyhee County, people come parking downtown. Because I was a cop, every once in a while that'd be my area.
Yeah.
So I'd see them block loops, and I saw the exercise people starting, and Mayor Nancolis and the City of Caldwell staff got the LID, so Local Improvement District, for the sidewalk improvements, ped ramps, lighting. It just piece by piece, it was kind of a Sim City, right? So they got all the things in place, and look at where we're at now. I mean, it's crazy.
It's beautiful. It's amazing. I mean, we go down there frequently, and we go ice skating with our kids down there. We go to dinner down there, go to events down there. Like, we love it. And same sort of thing, right? We have friends from all over the valley. In fact, first time I'd ever been to Indian Creek Steakhouses, because a friend of mine that lives in Boise is like, oh, you've got to go to Indian Creek. And then some other friends of ours live in Eagle are like, oh, you haven't been to Amano yet. You got to go to Amano.
Yeah.
Other friends are right. And like, they're telling us to come to dinner with them at restaurants in downtown Caldwell, right? Like, think back, it's like,
which is an irony,
like,
because all
an irony.
Up, it was always go to Meridian, and not even Meridian. It was always go to Boise.
Yeah.
Go to Boise. And there's a lot of great stuff I do love in Boise, a lot of great restaurants. Still like to visit. I hope we can get some of them out in Caldwell. But,
yeah. But Mayor Nancolis and staff and the leadership in place there did an amazing job. And I think that's a great example of how policies and good decisions can have long-term lasting impacts on communities, and how poor planning decisions and poor use of that power can have very negative impacts, right? I want to talk about, you talked briefly about infill. I did a quick study and pulled some facts and figures together for a hearing that we'd had a few months ago with the Board of County Commissioners, and I don't have them for Caldwell, but for Nampa has the ability to almost double its population with only infill based on current planning and zoning that's already in place, right? No additional approvals will need. but infill potential projects, NAMP could almost double its
Yeah, that's a lot. They're
population,
already
right?
big. Yeah.
And I would assume Caldwell's probably
Yeah.
very similar in that. And so this idea that, oh, we need to have rooftops, we need to have places for people to move here, we have to go develop. Hey, anyone that wants to put a project in out here, we're just going to, the default is to approve it. And with very few exceptions, okay, hey, we'll have some requests, some minor changes, but you almost never see these projects getting denied, right?
Yeah.
It's just, hey, make a few small concessions
Yeah.
and we're going to approve anything. And while you're doing that, at the same time, you're destroying the culture, the
Yeah.
heritage, what makes Idaho, Caldwell, Nampa, Boise,
Yeah.
Meridian, Eagle, the Treasure Valley, great places to want to live, right? And that's not to sound anti-development in any way, because I think the Indian Creek and some other examples of development
Right.
you could point to and say, this is good policy.
Yes.
And then there are plenty of examples of this is very, very poor policy. And those decisions matter. And those have massive impacts on the lives of the citizens who've lived here for a long time, the tax, the implication. And although cities don't necessarily take into consideration school districts in their land use decisions, the school districts have to live with the land use decisions that are made, right? And so how does this impact the schools? How does this impact, the quality of life for the people that are here? This tax on your time of being able to get anywhere. And then I guess in a roundabout way, the tax that would then come through past bonds to build additional schools and other things that, in a way becomes an effective tax on the people that have been there for a long time. So I want to hear about your thoughts, views, and vision relative to development, good policy versus bad policy, infill style projects, which it sounds like was a big part of your campaign, and what your thoughts and feelings are on that.
So, I like to use a dartboard example, right? So if you and I were to play darts, right, and we're talking about growth planning and such, if we're going to make strategic decisions that are going to last, a lifetime, they're going to be thought of as well decided decisions, and it's really going to benefit the city. So we're going to take darts, right? We're going to play, we each get 3, we throw, we take our turns, scores till the end of the game. We can't have a process where we're taking 100 darts and just from a bucket and just throwing them to see what sticks, right? You can have puzzles that the piece may fit, but is it the right piece? I think you really have to step back, not only be on the ground level, but go to the 20 to 50,000 level and see, what do we want our city to look like? What do we want? Are we just saying yes to anyone that comes? You buy a set of poster stamps, right? They all look the same. If you look at a lot of cities, they all got the same things. Yeah, some of those businesses are great, but, I really love the mom and pop stores. I love a variety of businesses. I'm big on competition, right? If
And the type of homes you have, what your developments look like, right? Like, do we only have starter homes, apartments, and
healthy mixture, density differences, a concentration of those, even things like Ustick Road, right? We now have these giant apartment complexes that are right up on, and I appreciate that people need a place to live, but there's places the sun no longer shines. And the people across the street that they've been there for decades, right? Or even if it's 5 years, 10 years, whatever, they bought a single family home.
Yeah.
Transition is important, right? Sure, more bang for your buck, but at the same time, why can't we do a 1 or a 2 and then go to the 3? Why does it have to be right up on the road? And you see that time and time again where we've plopped massive complexes right in the middle of a R1 residential and really ruin the area. Is there a better location? Could we have a better transition?
Are there infill places where something like that could be had rather than, taking farm ground, converting it to an apartment complex because that made financial sense for the developer.
And you think of driving to and fro. So, you cram that into, because R1, although it can have heavy traffic, typically is probably less traffic, right, than more industrial areas or
explain for our listeners that may not understand some of the different densities, just really.
Yeah, so if you go, so R1 is typically your lowest unless you go to that, country style where it's what's even bigger, estate style.
Like 1+ acre.
Yeah, 1+ and such. And as you go up, R2, R3, your density starts to go up. And what's
the number of residences per acre.
More residences per acre. So that's where you start to see those. When you look at your comprehensive plan and other planning mechanisms, if you understand that, and then the C commercial, right? So C, you can put a variety of different things, the higher you go up. So I think it's important to maintain our residential areas and then focus, right? If you're going to have more traffic, and you're probably going to want a large apartment complex is going to need maybe a laundromat or restaurants near it. So maybe it's better to focus those on those bigger areas with bigger roads, because we have arterial and collector. So we've seen some of these put on collector streets. So then they overwhelm the traffic.
Yeah.
And most of the time, parking, right? We have a parking problem in Caldwell.
Yeah.
So they don't require the developer to have at least 2 or more spots, right? I think we use a 1.5. Well, why are we even using a half of a spot? I do get that that takes more space, but then you also have to consider the overflow. So now you thought it was going to be this nice, they have nice designs, right? I'll give them credit. Those designers are doing a pretty good job. Do I agree with the development? Not necessarily, but I know for a fact, because you can drive around Caldwell and other cities where you see what they said was going to be a great development. It was not going to affect the area. And everybody's parking their cars all along the streets. And then people come home from work and they can't even park where they normally would. So, there's this domino effect on this decision.
Diminishes the quality of life in the
Quality
area.
of life, people are stressed. Now people are pissed. They're calling the police on each other. Now it just
It
escalates.
devalues the properties
Yes.
around it. It creates a community where people only live because they're obligated to financially, rather than a community where people choose to live.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm a big advocate that the most valuable currency that any community can have is its residents and is the rising generation.
Yes.
Right? You want to have a community where people that grow up in that community say, I want to choose to live here. I want to choose to raise my family here. Not the second I can get out or I can afford something better, I'm going someplace else. And I think that those should be strong decisions in determining decisions that are made at the leadership, at the mayor and city council level, of what are the policies that we're putting in place? Are we creating a community where my kids, if they have the option to live anywhere else, are going to choose to live here?
Yeah, you're right. And, on the campaign trail, there was a lot of people. And I wasn't taking a dig, just to clear up, at people in apartments. I was just simply saying our planning processes are making them squeezed in like a sardine can.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to them, because then they do have to find a place to park, right? And we create this adversarial relationship between, apartments and residential, and people do get frustrated, right? Especially we have roads that, although we've chip sealed and maybe even shaved them down or replaced them or tore them out, replaced them over time. A lot of our roads, 10th Avenue, several parts of Ustic, Homedale, Montana, that are like when I got my driver's license back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And other people that I talk to say they're still like the same width they are going back into the 70s, maybe even the 60s. So we're building at such a rate, and we want all these people to come down to downtown, which I will say that downtown isn't all of Caldwell, right? I have to think in that holistic picture of everything. So as we look at codes, our comp plan and other things, we have to make a decision, right? How we're going to build as a city. And when you do just rubber stamp everything, as people like to state, and you grow at a rate that just you can't keep up, you get stretch marks, right? You get pain points. And I know people that hate living there right now because it's so bad. We look at all the accidents happening. People are speeding. People are just pissed at each other. And now, you can't even find parking sometimes downtown, which is not a bad thing that we have that many people coming downtown. But the fact that we didn't plan ahead and we let a bunch of stuff be built that didn't have their own parking, even just one story underneath. Some of our bigger facilities, like the
have a podium style parking
add another story underneath. And then it takes those pain points, and the goal should be for people to live as harmonious as possible, right? And if you're throwing all sorts of wrenches into it, then, we as a government or past government have caused animosity and chaos that could have easily been avoided.
Well, I think that's part of the role of good governance, is that decisions are being made that are sustainable long-term and that are going to benefit the people that live and work and play there for a long period of time. And rather than just approving projects as they come in, but to be okay with walking away, right? We're okay if this development doesn't come here because we don't have to have it, right? We want developments that are going to contribute to our community. So basically our default answer is no, we're not approving projects unless it adds value to our community.
Exactly.
We have no obligation to just approve every project that comes in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we have the say on whether or not this adds value to our
Yeah.
community. And just adding rooftops does not add value, right? Just adding apartments does not add value. And I've lived in apartments for years. I've lived in
Same
apartments for
here.
years. So
Yeah.
it's like, I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
But I do have a problem when an inordinate amount of time and effort and planning goes into where are we putting apartment
Yeah.
complexes
You're right.
versus what is the holistic approach of our community creating places where
Yeah.
people should be able to elevate and live.
Yeah.
You know what? I lived in an apartment in Caldwell, and then I had a starter home in Caldwell, and then I lived in
Yeah.
a nicer neighborhood in Caldwell. And then eventually I was able to go buy some property and have a beautiful home
Yeah.
and a place for my family to go live. Like, we should have options where those
Yes,
types of
I
things
agree.
exist rather than, oh man, we can't understand why our crime is so high. We can't understand why we have these issues.
Yep.
We can't understand why we have that. It was like, well, what kind of homes are you building?
Yes.
What type of development are you encountering?
Yeah.
Well, when you're just letting people come in and pillage your community and just put any development in and just approve it, like, why do you think that you're getting the problems that you're getting, right? A lot of those things could be solved up front.
Yeah.
And I think that Caldwell in particular is a community that has a lot to offer
Yes.
and
Oh,
has a
yes.
lot of things that could attract really nice development. And I think that as the valley continues to push west, right, the development will continue to push west, and there will be a premium on the ability to
Yep.
go get more land,
Yeah.
to be able to have an estate style acreage, to be able to
Yeah.
have nice neighborhoods that, have places close by where people want to live, work, and play. And so I think that Caldwell really is a great community in a lot of ways. It has a lot to offer. And so I really value your perspective on that, and a lot of the things
Yeah.
that you've campaigned on and pushed. What are some of the challenges that you see facing Caldwell? If you had to name a couple of the top challenges right now that you feel like face the community, what would you say those are?
You know, especially with the scale and scope of the people that have come in here, right? Which I do welcome all my, fellow residents that are here. I understand they're escaping states that, had different directions they were going. They didn't necessarily agree with. So with that, circle back, I'd like to say I do appreciate where you talked about being able to climb a ladder, right? That's why it's important to have that housing variation, right? So
Yeah.
that's a problem, is making sure that we have a variation houses. So when you're newer, out of school and such, high school, and you're working whatever job, maybe you're still going to school, you should be able to have apartments, right? Not big, massive complexes necessarily that really take away from Caldwell itself and are an eyesore, but have apartments, 2, maybe 3-story, especially if there's a transition to where you can afford to live. I mean, we don't want people homeless or having to sleep on couches. So it's important that we make sure that we do have that housing ladder to where as you progress in life that you can go. But it's also figuring out a way, how can we get the prices down? How can we, which is a call for more density. So that's a challenge, is that balancing act of, do we close the door, right? There's people that want us to close the door. They came here a year ago, 2 years ago, 5, 10, and they don't want to be like where they came from. So they want us to close the door. Well, that's a challenge, right? Because once again, when our children grow up, I love my son, but I don't want him living with me his whole life.
Sure.
Right? I want him to,
You should, right? It's like, yeah,
go out and get an apartment, and then, get his first.
I want him to be successful. I want him to not need me.
Yeah, move up. When you do get into governance, there is a overwhelming tidal wave of people that come at you, and there's people that don't want you to change, right? Things how they are, and want you to keep that process. So that's where you have to really soul search to decide, right? Are you going to stay true to your convictions, and keep moving in the direction? So whatever direction you campaigned on, you now have to get the staff in the city to have that same mindset, right?
Yeah.
So our policies, procedures, recommendations for ordinance modifications. Do we want to modify the comp plan based upon what I feel the people elected me?
Yeah.
It's not that totalitarian decision. It's, I heard the people. Now I'm looking at this, whole plan. What do we need to do to make it so we do maintain that gem,
Yeah.
right? So we don't overwhelm ourselves. Then comes the politics, right? Counselor's great, but we have differences of opinions. So it's getting them on board, right, with making the right decision, making sure we maintain our way of life. We don't grow so fast to where we're overwhelming ourselves. And it even goes even further. So here's a challenge, employees, right? If we're just approving stuff, are we taking a look at our employees to see, are they overworked and overwhelmed? And, time and time again, organizations post pictures of who's being hired and ceremonies and things like that, but we're not taking pictures of who's going out the door.
Yeah.
Sure, sometimes people make bad choices, and we're glad they left because we had to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Right? Because they were just,
We
what.
got an upgrade. Yeah.
But there's people to leave because they don't feel valued. Sometimes they hey, I could go to the next city and make more money. Sure, the job may be just as hard, but at least I can go make more money. So paying compensation is important. But then that's also not raising the pay so much to where, we're drowning the taxpayers in
Yeah. Taxpayers really don't love giving
budgets.
pay raises to government employees, right?
Yeah, budgets are huge, and paying benefits are a huge part of our expenses.
Yeah.
So, but we also want to take care of them and feel valued. And I've been taking a look really hard at, our response times from police, from fire, and even our community partners like the paramedics, right? They ran a levy because they're shorthanded and their numbers are zero. When you talk about looking at all the things, if you want to run for office, that's why that's important, because I need to make sure as mayor that we have the appropriate services in place to be able to serve our constituents. So it's then relaying that information, having the guts to very publicly, and I'm going to continue hammering on this, we're working our people to death. We don't have the things in place that people pass levies for and bonds. And, people are not fans of voting for, school bonds, levies, first responders, but people stepped up to the plate and did it because it was the right thing to do. But now we need to show them where their money is.
And we be responsible with the funds that we get, right?
Be responsible.
Like I had this example in one of our locations a number of years ago where I had a salesman come that was trying to sell us a new phone system to put in one of our facilities. And he had told me in his sales pitch that they had recently sold one of these phone systems to one of the local communities here. I won't say which one it was. And there were basically two different phone systems that were basically identical. The only difference between one versus the other was that one had a little screen on it that gave you the ability to basically like FaceTime before FaceTime, right? And this is at a desk phone. And so I asked, like, okay, well, what's the cost difference between the two? This one's roughly $100 per phone. This one's basically $1,000 per phone. So, and we sold, this local community 100 of these phones at $1,000 a piece. So let me get this straight. You just sold one of the cities $100,000 phone system that could have been a $10,000 phone system, where the only added feature to it is that if someone wanted, they could hit a little button, and sitting at their desk, they could then see the face of the person inside the building that they were calling and talking to.
Wow, that's insane.
Said, yeah. And I think it's those type of examples that the taxpayers hear, and they think, what a gross misuse of funds.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the last thing I want to do is go approve that, oh, hey, the city needs more money, right? The school district needs more money. This entity needs more money because of a misappropriation of funds. And I think that as strong leaders, showing that, hey, we're being judicious with our use of funds, right? Like we are providing the services that we say that we're going to provide. We're providing value to the community. Better things are happening. And in some cases, that may mean that we're spending a little bit more money up front. But the long-term cost and benefit to the community is going to far outweigh that incremental cost that we had to incur, at this one point in time of doing the project. And so I think those are all great things. You also hit on the importance of maintaining, training, keeping good people, but then getting rid of those that don't fit in cases. Maybe they're not in line with the new direction or what the will of the people is. And I think that those are decisions that great leaders make, that they're willing to make hard decisions, right? Like that's a big part of being a good leader, is to be able to make hard decisions.
Oh yeah. Well, you got to be on board, right? If we're not harmonious and in sync, it's a disservice, right? Because then you start to have issues, animosity, and really, once again, where I campaigned on, I want Caldwell to be prosperous, safe, and secure, right? Everything from our drinking water to our roads to our school system, make sure we have SROs, people getting pulled over, right? That takes a lot. And you have to have those tough decisions and conversations and be willing to call the things out when you need. Like I said, a 100 versus a 10,000. Here's how I think. I would have rather gone with a $10,000 phone system because it still allows you to call and do the things. Now I would have had $80,000 to maybe fix roads and do other things. You
Exactly.
don't always have to spend the money, right? I don't think in terms like that, like, ooh, I get 80,000, let's go spend it. How can I strategically reutilize what would have been a waste of money to be able to see each other on a screen? Let's go fix some sidewalks.
Yeah.
Let's go fix some roads.
Well, and I think even like
Yeah.
sharing those type of wins are important
Yeah.
things that leaders need to do to help show the people
Yeah.
to have confidence in, like, hey, citizens of Caldwell, we want to make you aware this was something that was
Yeah.
happening. We ended this
Yes.
particular service, or we did this,
Yeah.
which is adding funds back. We're then going to use them in these ways, or then back to the community. And I think that that's what people yearn to see out of leaders.
Yeah.
So I want to say, wow, they made hard decisions. They were willing to do things that helped benefit our community in a positive way. One of the things I wanted to hit on really quickly, because I know that the affordable housing thing is a huge deal, right? Like I saw something this morning about the median home price in Boise in 2019 was $327,000, and today it's $415,000.
Yeah.
And I don't want to pretend that that's not an issue. However, I think a bigger issue than that is more than an affordability issue. We have a skills issue. And having been someone that has lived in apartments, who's rented houses, who had a starter home, and has worked my way up, that all happened. I lived in a little old lady's attic outside of Fort Lewis McCord up in Washington, and it's mouse infested, no air conditioning, no heat, right? But it's like you live through those things. You go make difficult decisions. And I counsel people all the time that for the first at least 10 years of your career, you should have two jobs. You should have two jobs.
Yeah.
And one of those jobs can be going to school.
Yeah.
One of those jobs can be gaining additional skill set or some sort of apprenticeship or some sort of internship. But you should be spending the first 10 years of your career at least doing two jobs and gaining a skill set, making yourself valuable, developing a network, developing expertise to where you can bring value to the marketplace. Because now more than ever, like, we have this disparity of income, but I think now it's easier to make more money than it's ever been before. And you will get rewarded if you go develop a valuable skill set. And so I want to hopefully inspire our young people, let them see that there are opportunities that, like, yeah, it's okay, right? Like, I've lived in an apartment complex. I've lived in a little lady's attic. I've lived in rental homes. There's nothing wrong with that. But to stay in that place and to think that this is the only place you can ever go, or to build a community of this is all we have and this is all we have to offer. So we're the apartment community. We're the starter home community, and that's it. I think that that's where a lot of communities go wrong, is that they overemphasize that one component rather than, kind of like the ladder approach that we talk about, right? That a holistic approach. And so, I definitely think that good leadership, good governance, communication makes a huge difference, and hopefully inspiring our young people. I mean, I think that's, what we're both here to do is, you have a son, I have kids, and I want them to be better than me at everything. And I want them to have more than I have at everything. And I want them to be able to do that in a way that they're not dependent on me to be there. I'd like to hopefully inspire, and not just my own kids, but, the community in which I live, and make a difference to people all around. And so, I think that's a great view of leadership. As we wrap up things here, the last couple questions, as you look back over your life, were there mentors or people that you felt like made a big difference and have helped you to get to where you are today? If so, maybe who were a couple of those people, and what were the lessons they taught you?
Between, the horse world, the ag side, I had great teachers, growing up. But one of my biggest influences was my grandfather. He just passed recently, I think it was 2 years ago, and he was in his 80s. But he grew up here. I think he's actually originally from New Mexico, but moved up here as a child. And he always told me not only to watch my back, right, but always harped on me to do the right thing and to stick my head down and move forward, right? No matter what's going on out here,
Go do hard things.
Go do hard things. And when you briefly talked about, moving your way up, I've clawed my way through. I remember eating ramen noodles and rice and living in people's basements, and, renting places with no dishwasher or laundry, and having to go, put coins in just to get my laundry done, and late at night after working, working multiple jobs, right? I think that's lost on a lot of young folks, which I'll tie back to the mentorship. People expect to be at the level their parents are as soon as they go out the gate.
Yeah.
And they fail to use their youth to work hard to be able to later in life play hard. I think that's what's lost on a lot. They have this expectation, because now we get them cell phones, right? That $800,000 piece of equipment in their hands, access to the world has access to them, and then they see all the things coming through the social media. I'm glad that you and I were in an era where we didn't have all that stuff, right? It was relationships, friendships, hard work, going exploring the world. Now it's just we're zombies on those, little boxes in our hand. Our adults guilty of it too, but we had those fundamentals. So one, I would tell people to wake up and go see the world and experience it and use your youth to work hard to get up that ladder and to build wealth. Then in tying that into the mentorship, that's where my grandfather always told me, to just do the right thing all the time, right? Work hard, do the right thing, pay your taxes, watch your back, and look forward. Along the ways I've had political, Representative Lucas Kaler, Kent Marmon mentored me through this campaign. They've been successful over time. They went out and met with the community. They're doing the second round of that right now. They've had town halls and things like that where it shows me it's important to go out to your constituents, right? Don't just have them come to you. Go to them.
Yeah.
A person I'm close to is our current council president, Diana Register. There's times she grounded me, right? We had some pretty in-depth conversations. I was never at a point where things got to my head, but it was just things were challenging, right? There was a lot going on. There was a lot of pressure. People try and push you out of a race, but at the end of the day, it was to keep going forward. And I was actually close friends with her husband as a police officer, and I love the guy. He was amazing. He was a good soul, a good cop. He worked literally right up. He loved his community so much that he worked basically up to death when he couldn't because he had pancreatic cancer. So since then, we've maintained a friendship, and, her and I are massively community oriented, and we're big on listening to the people, which then causes conflict with, other elected officials that may listen to some, but not that holistic community-wide view, right? Everyone's opinion counts.
Yeah.
So it's hearing from people like her, seeing the access to the community, like some of our state legislators, watching our president. Sure, I don't agree with some of the things he says sometimes, but he's getting things done. And I think that's important to look at folks like that. And you take all of those elements, that are your fundamentals, and decide that you're here to get things done, to carry out the people's work, and move forward. So I have a long list of them.
Those
are my main ones.
No, I think those are great. From your perspective, why do you think that it appears sometimes that mayors or city councils feel incentivized to approve projects from developers or special interests? From your perspective, what do you?
So, when you get in the meetings, right? When you start to live in the government world, that's a lot of the people you're hearing from. Those people that attend the meetings. Sometimes there's not a lot of pushback from the citizens because, I don't agree with like our notification distances. Sometimes there's just a couple hundred feet.
Yeah.
From I think it's like 500 feet. I'd have to go back and look, but a lot of people aren't aware until it's too late. So when you're sitting in the rooms, you see these plans, they seem nice. Maybe you don't necessarily know the code, right? You don't necessarily know are you driving the roads? Do you know what it's like? I think politicians need to get out there during rush hour, right? Is it overwhelmed? Talk to not necessarily the leadership of your department, like police, fire, and others, and medics. Go talk to the workers. Go see what their workload's like. Are they stressed out, burnt out? Talk to your HR. Are you getting people that are coming in, expressing things of concern? Look at your local land use planning act, like the subdivision section and others. See what other communities are doing. Talk to your other communities. Rick Hogebo and I are actually, we met, and we're going to have our first joint, I don't know if it's the first ever, but the first I can ever remember, a joint Nampa Caldwell city council meeting to talk to VRT, right? Valley Ride Transit. So that's, people have a variety of opinions on that.
Yep.
But it's collaborating, working together. And so that's another piece of the puzzle, right? To do
collaborating together with neighboring communities.
Yes. And if our council was willing to do that, which was wonderful, and so was theirs. But if you had unwilling members, that's where your challenge is getting people to start doing the right things, right? And knowing the code, knowing what they can push back on. Is this the right piece? It's okay to turn down annexations if it's not going to make your community better, just as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
You don't have to approve everything. You can utilize your code, state statute. It should be, instead of using a bazooka on everything, let's use a scalpel, right? If we're going to make our community, let's make sure that we're making the right decision. So it's not just another postage stamp.
Yeah.
I had a gentleman that owns, their family is one of the first, I think the first, oil change chain in Caldwell years and years ago. Since then, we've added a bazillion of them. And I welcome new businesses, but you have to be willing to have a conversation of, do we need more of those? Let's put some restrictions until the city grows so much more.
Yeah.
Like we use the 1 per 1,000 for cops, right? Well, how many pawn shops do we need? How many oil change places? Like, we don't want to build ourselves in a position like Subway does, where they build so many so close that they end up cannibalizing each other.
Yeah.
So it's important you look at that picture as you decide to build your community.
Well, I was doing some homework in preparation for this as well. According to the census that was done in 2023, from 2017 to 2023, over 24,000 acres of farmland in Canyon County alone were either developed or being prepared to be developed.
Yes.
Right? So clearly, washing away the heritage, the culture, and what Canyon County is and has been for a long time is one of the primary challenges.
Yeah.
As mayor, how do you feel like you're going to be able to handle that and working with the groups and people that are
once
affiliated?
again, right? So it's getting the culture change in the city amongst the staff. We have great staff, by the way. We have a lot of great people. I've been in awe and impressed, with what they do each and every day. But I understand that a predecessor that had a way of doing things, it's now reprogramming, to get for my vision, for the direction that the people want us to go. Yes, we are subservient to the state, right? So a big thing is, and this is where communication with your state legislature is important. If they're looking at putting things in place that it's going to allow the continuance of the free-for-all or make it even worse, it's probably a good idea to be writing them or voicing your concerns or even sending a representative, right? Groups should be forming to send representatives to help push back on some of that. But, locally, once again, comp plan is important, right? I'm glad that the state clawed back the area of impacts because cities just went way out there, right? And there's no way we're going to be building these areas anytime soon. So I'm glad that they brought that into place because it's important to focus on.
Senator Akey from Canyon County is the one that authored that bill.
Yeah. So that was very helpful. But once again, it's getting the staff to understand that, we need to look at this holistic picture of where do the people want Caldwell to go? Sorry if that made some noise. Where do we want to go? Where are we at? Do we want to be a metropolis? I got interviewed by the Idaho Press Tribune editorial board. They had brought up one of my comments that, that I don't want us to be a metropolis like Boise is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Is there great things in Boise? Sure. I love coming to concerts and games, and there's a lot of good breweries and other restaurants, a great green belt and all that. But we don't want to have to look up all the time at our buildings. We don't want the sun taken away. We don't want our gorgeous views. If that's what Boise wants, it's great. They're right up against the mountains. It's easy to see it. We don't.
Caldwell and Boise can both be beautiful in
their own ways.
Right?
Absolutely. Right. Not digging Boise. Like I said, people want to live in Boise, good on them. But, we have a way of life in Caldwell, and there's the agricultural community combination. So we want to make sure we maintain that and not run roughshod.
Which really doesn't exist in Boise, right? That's not
over. Yeah. They've I even said Ada County's almost lost all of its ag.
Yeah.
Like they're at a point where that's going to be not a thing soon. I mean, micro, right? Areas, but overall it's
not part of the culture.
Powerhouse that they used to be. So, I firmly believe that we should look at maintaining that and protecting our heritage, but giving people an opportunity to climb that ladder as we spoke about earlier.
Yeah. No, love it. Mayor Phillips, thanks for being here with us. Appreciate you answering the questions and the leadership and the time and effort that you give to giving back to the community. So.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It's a wonderful opportunity. You've been amazing, and I look forward to hopefully coming back on in the future.
Yeah. I look forward to working with you.
You got great staff, by the way.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.